Per usual, living on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Gonna take a look at Bitcoin today. I am highly concerned with two things specifically: weekly B bands and weekly cloud. I put together this list of stuff. Bull, neutral, bear. To me, the bearish arguments are much stronger than the bullish arguments, and most of these neutral selections could easily flip bearish here in the next week. I'm going to hit on all of these points in the video, whether briefly or at greater length. But let's fly through some high quality TA here. So the first thing, I've seen, this is the 40-day correlation with Nasdaq, okay? I've seen 10-day, 365, 180. I've seen all sorts of correlations with the Nasdaq that I didn't know people even looked at, but hey, I guess that's the thing. And all of them are screaming we are more and more correlated with the Nasdaq since the COVID lows. You could say this is risk-on sentiment. You could say that the risk-on people are trading crypto now. You could say that the crypto people are forcing this by trading it as risk-on. Say what you will. The point of this here is it ain't good because the Nasdaq and all of Legacy's in a bit of a pickle here as rates will continue to rise, and that's just not going to be bullish. So we'll see how this ends up, but we need VIX to stay down, we need Dixie to stay down, we need Nasdaq to not crumble, or we need to just decouple from Legacy completely, right? We need all those things to happen to some varying degree in order for crypto to maintain its range at a bare minimum. It's done rather well. It's been resilient, BTC specifically, at holding near the middle of the 2021 range. But if Nasdaq starts to crumble, I mean, watch out below. This is on-chain activity BTC, transaction counts in the red, active addresses in the green. You can see there's nothing special here really. We're neutral as far as I can tell. We're in the middle of these ranges, maybe leaning slightly bearish as on-chain activity is slowing a little bit, but sometimes this can be leading. Sometimes you do see a rise in on-chain activity before you break a range, pre-range expansion, whatever you want to think of that as. We're not quite seeing that, right? We've seen essentially the same active addresses for the past 6 months. There's no pickup in activity here. And I know there's Lightning, I know there's SegWit, I know there's output batching, all this other stuff, right? So maybe this isn't even a metric worth paying attention to anymore, and you have to sort of tease it apart a little bit more and see what's going where exactly and why, right? This may be too simplistic of a metric now. Alpha decay, as it's known, because things are getting more complex, right? But I still think a lot of people look at this, especially active addresses, to see where things are. On the bottom of my bull list was LFG, Wallet, Luna buying BTC. It's bullish right now, but if we start to crumble and Terra needs to shore up its peg on UST, they will start selling instead of buying, and that's how we get to 15K, because it's going to be the worst time imaginable for crypto. Let's imagine the scenario here, okay? Let's imagine Corona lows happen again. Maybe not as quickly, but maybe close to as quickly, right? BTC's margin cascade down. Terra can't hold its peg. Terra decides, hey, we're going to sell all this BTC we just bought to shore up this peg, right? And then boom, there's more margin cascades. There's more just TWAP selling a BTC. That's the nightmare when you have one entity. This is number 18 on the rich list, controlling this much BTC, 42,000, 1.7, right? Now, I may be exaggerating what might happen here, but this is selling pressure that's building up. It's buying pressure that's taking us nowhere, and selling pressure that will be added to additional selling pressures when there's this contagion in crypto, right? So I don't like this from a risk perspective for BTC specifically, because it doesn't really seem to be helping too much currently. It may have helped weeks ago, but currently not so much. Q2 seasonality, we are 17 days into Q2. It's early, okay? I gotta admit, it's early. This could be the most bullish bull run from May to the end of the year, right? But right now, as we stand, we're negative 11% on 17 days into the quarter. Historically, Q2 has been the most bullish quarter, along with Q4 for Bitcoin. For ETH, it's actually the first half of the year that's more bullish. It only beat BTC in Q4 last year for the first time ever. I'm not going to talk too much about ETH. They have a merge coming up. Ideally, even if BTC lags or staggers or whatever, ETH could just save the entire market because there's undoubtedly the fundamentals are there that ETH can save itself into the merge, post-merge, deflationary, blah, 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 right? ETH's probably going to be fine. I'm not really worried about ETH. Bitcoin in the near term, I'm not so sure. 2-year MA multiplier, we aren't in the sell zone. Certainly we aren't overbought, we aren't oversold. Anything below 34.1, this has crept up quite a bit since 8K when this started in November, right? So that is extremely bullish for mean reversion because mean reversion in this case isn't that far down, right? It's only 34. At 34, we're still basically in the 2021 range. The reason I like looking at this, it's really never been wrong. It tells you oversold, overbought, gives you a good idea when to DCA in and out. Anything below 34, and I start buying with any fiat I have left after paying taxes, which is admittedly almost nothing, but 34 is certainly a good level to watch on the long term because, again, it's really never been wrong. It's told you many times where a good buy is in the grand scheme of things. 200-week moving average heat map, by the way, these are all from lookingatbitcoin.com. Great website, free, check it out. Also telling you the low is at 21. So between 21 and 34K, that's the zone where I will personally be buying. May we go to 15? I don't know, maybe. But historically, if we continue on this path, 21 and 34 currently, that entire range is a buy based on the highest time frame technicals you can look at that we have data for, right? Does that mean it's going to work? I don't know. This could go to 15 or less and failed experiment. Here come the CBDCs. I don't know, right? It doesn't matter. But you got to take a stab somewhere, and 21 to 34 is certainly a good range. We're also halfway in between halving, which I don't have on the list here, which I'll put as neutral. Some people would consider that bearish because we're most bullish post-halving, or have been historically. The blue here is just telling you the 200-week not really moving up very quickly, so we're essentially neutral flat on that. But again, the mean reversion potential for this is higher and higher and higher each week. So when Sunday rolls around at close, this is going to move up a little bit more, right? It's going to keep moving up a little bit more slowly, so long as we're above it. MVRV market cap based on how much a coin has moved over the past year. Technically, that's MCAP minus realized cap with a standard deviation tacked onto it. Again, just telling you, oversold, overbought. There's a range. It's not quite in that buy zone. So again, we could go to 21 to 34, right? That's where this lives as far as MVRV is concerned. So it's not like we're at some mega uber low for MVRV. Historically, we have and can go lower. So watch for that one. BTC on exchanges continues to just plummet. And I don't know where this is going to end up, if it's even going to matter. Because let's say it doesn't matter. Let's say we go to 21 to 34, despite balances on exchanges just continuing to plummet, right? To me, at that point, then this metric becomes fairly useless because you'd assume that float is decreasing, coins for sale is decreasing. You're going to see eventually that supply-demand dynamic kick in and prices move higher. Now, if we were dumping BTC on exchanges and we're in a range, I'm super bearish, right? So it goes both ways. The logic is the same on both sides of that. ETH, by the way, just there's probably going to be no ETH left on centralized exchanges very shortly. It's all going to be on DeFi or staking or Lido, right? Or somewhere, right? But there was very little ETH on exchanges as a relative percentage as well. Look at Puel multiple. It is the daily coin issuance divided by issuance over the past year. Again, much like MVRV, this can go lower, has plenty of room for lower. Historically, this has been another really good metric to look at, and we're not quite in that buy zone just yet. That's just where it is, right? 21 to 34, and we are very likely in the buy zone at that point based on the Puel multiple. Hashriman's another one that historically has told you kind of where the bottom might be, where we're bottomy. They go on to explain this here. I'm not going to explain it in great detail, but it's trying to tell you relative cost of mining to price, and we haven't crossed any bearishness or any signal here yet on Hashriman. Now we get into the fun stuff. Last night I went on this spree of looking at some random account, Tech Dev, on Twitter. Some of you may have heard of him. I don't know. He's got a bunch of followers. He posts here. It is, TechDev52. So give him a follow. I just like looking at this stuff. Let's follow Blake too. I like looking at everything, right? I may disagree with it completely, but it's just interesting to look at and helps widen your worldview, right? And Blake had posted this fractal on the 13th, which sure, right? It looks similar. And ultimately though, this is the fractal. It's Justin Mamis, I think is his name. This is an old fractal, maybe originated in the 70s. I don't know. I don't know exactly the entire history behind this, but first time I'm seeing it is this cycle, right? I've been here since 2013. I've never seen this thing before. Apparently it's some sentiment thing. And yeah, you could argue that BTC looks like this and we're in this aversion stage now. And if we make higher highs, we're good to go, right? I wouldn't necessarily need the fractal to tell me that. This fractal's 40, it's 47K is what it is. Anything above 47, we're good to go. But until then, oof, this is a hope and a prayer for me that this thing turns around. Because right now we're just not seeing it. Volume is zero. Buyers lose everything immediately, right? There's no strong bullishness that it feels like. You know, we may be drawing out float, but at the same time, there's seemingly little money coming in to like keep us at a price. You could argue that whale wallets are getting bigger or some other junk that I see floating around as well. And sure, I mean, again, I don't think dormancy flows are going to save you, which is why, you know, I've got dormancy flows next to Luna buying BTC, right? That's just, to me, that's not enough. That's not enough to save us from going lower. Here's a super cycle comparison. This thing could go out to 2026, right? We could just keep filling this thing in. I'm not saying it's bad, right? But again, I like looking at this stuff because as it sits now, I'm both in a margin long from 44K and bearish. So that just shows you where my head's at. I'm also long ETH from 3100. So maybe I'm a little salty for giving all that back on a round trip on BTC, but the expectation for me certainly is this thing's in trouble. Here's some Elliott wave thing running flat correction. Never heard of it. Sure, right? Again, I'm not going to bet the house on this, but maybe we survive based on this stuff collectively put together. I don't know. Here's the most problematic. Here's the lead. I buried it. I'm digging it back up. Weekly Bollinger Bands. Okay, how this works if you have no idea what Bollinger Bands are, they're two standard deviations from some neutral point, which in this case is the 20-week SMA. When the bands tighten, that means volatility is contracting. Believe it or not, we're contracting in volatility here on a 20-week basis. When they expand, that means a move is happening. Volatility is increasing, right? So that's the first thing to know. Second thing to know is on backtesting, doesn't matter. Has it told you anything? You know, these green and red colors here are telling you price relative to that 20 neutral point, 20 SMA. So historically, any multi-week squeeze has never been wrong. Never been wrong. I'm not going to count this as this is a Corona candle here. This technically wasn't multi-squeeze at or multi-week at this caliber. This was 1 week. This was 1 week. Multi-week down, or multi-week green up, multi-week red down, multi-week green up, multi-week green up. This one, again, maybe, okay, you know, you could say there were 2 of 9 that were wrong and or murky. The rest of them, there's no argument. There's no debate. If we get this low on volatility for 2 or more weeks and we are below the 20 SMA, good night. That's bearish. That is a very high likelihood that we're going to break down. So until we're back above the 20 SMA, I'm extremely worried for bullishness. We're going to get another candle in a few hours here, but it's also going to be red. So guaranteed multi-week bearish setup here, and that's never been wrong. Hey, I hope it's wrong. I hope we live to see the day this week that it's wrong, next week, whatever, May. This might take a month to squeeze out, right? But Bollinger Band width down here is telling you historically, we don't get much tighter, right? We're at like 0.42, maybe we get to 0.35. So we'll see what it looks like this week. But we're getting close, certainly. MACD here on the weekly is neutral. It's on the bullish side of that, but essentially flat neutral, right? Momentum has completely reset as far as I'm concerned, based on B-bands, based on weekly MACD. So I think down looks more likely based on MAs, but we certainly have the ability to increase that momentum to crank that up. Here's another thing that's extremely concerning is the weekly cloud. We have a bearish TK cross here already. If we break lows, my gut is telling me you short that and forget about it. You short that, right? You short that from 35 to, I don't know, wherever it ends up, you know. I measured this out and said 65% reduction from the cross is 15K. So that isn't a call. That's just like, look, this has never been wrong. If we break below the cloud, we take a dive. These have been multi-week dives, right? This was Corona, but there isn't a ton of data here. That's one saving grace, maybe, right? We could chop around, but it is very unlikely if we drift below the cloud here that we're going to magically flip to all-time high retest anytime soon. So that's very concerning. You know, alternatively, we just jump 15K from 40, and then we pull a Corona and then off to new all-time highs again. I don't think that's going to happen, but you know, if I'm drawing out the decision tree of possibilities, that's one way we could save this as well. But this thing would have to stay flat until we get a bullish TK recross. Flat or establish higher highs. And again, at 47, above 47K, I think we're fine. I think we're all-time high retest. We're laughing all the way to the bank towards the 100K plus level, right? Whatever. I just think the probability there is less than 5% where we sit here this week. And hey, I hope I'm wrong, right? Here's the weekly alligator as well. 3 MAs. We're below all of them. The fractal's telling you anything below 34 is a short. That's a short entry. Trend is already bearish. There's your entry right there. And that really just tells you everything that the cloud tells you. Nothing any different there on the weekly. Weekly close below the cloud would be devastating. Weekly close below the B-bands would be devastating. These are all bearish continuation signals, no matter how you want to slice it. Another potential way we save this is on the pitchfork from 2018. If we stay in this range, maybe we get some sort of bull div, triple bottom, something, I don't know, right? Kind of like we did here, maybe. And we sort of stretch this possibility as we did in overbought territory into oversold territory. But we're running out of road here. You know, by October, we're definitely going to know. I think by May we'll know. And potentially even this week, right? Based on Bollinger Bands, the next 2 weeks, you're going to know. You're going to know if we're headed to 15 or if we're fine above 47, I think. I doubt we just continue to tighten here for the next 3 weeks into May. I think you'll see a move sooner than that. Daily 50, 200 bearish. We're below the daily, right? We're below the 200, below the 50. The cross is still bearish. Now, if all these things were different, right? If we were still above 45 on the ascending triangle, above the 200 MA on the daily, above the yearly pivot, that's a much different market. Volume coming back instead of declining for 4 months straight, right? Different market. Now we are still hanging on by a thread on this ascending triangle, which is why I put it in the neutral column. We're still sort of ping-ponging between 47 and 37, really, on VPVR. And hey, we could have this crazy week, right? We could break 45 again, break 47 again. That's why I'm still long. Technically, we're still inside of this thing. We're technically still, not today, maybe, we'll see how today closes. Maybe today's the day I just let go more of that long position as a percentage of the total. But we haven't quite made lower lows yet. You know, we made lows on the cloud, but anything below the current low, I mean, this looks like a bear flag. This should break down, right? If you're being objective about it. None of this stuff looks bullish at all. None of it on TA. There's just nothing that is telling you that this thing's going to save itself. Lastly, here's the daily alligator fractal stuff as well. And again, it's just telling you any lower lows, and that's a short entry on the daily. This has been super noisy, so it's hard to take this too seriously. But, you know, again, we're daily cloud, weekly B bands, weekly cloud. These are problematic. So for me, it's like, do I trust the TA stuff over this on-chain fractal nonsense, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going to become a true believer of on-chain analysis and dormancy flows, and it's going to show me the light in the next few weeks. I just don't think that's the case. I just think we're setting ourselves up for easily a retest of the bottom of the range at this point, as we're leaning more and more and more bearish every week. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I too bearish? Am I missing something? And happy trading.